Dustin.
There are no more people here today.
Huh?
Can't believe there are more people here today with all the stuff on.
There's nothing to worry about here. All right.
Hey, you never know what people think are important.
Right.
To be honest with you, like, what I think is like a no-brainer.
6 o'clock, first order of business is the pledge of the flag. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So you didn't get it today. Whatever I put out, you have to send it in vice versa, because no one else did. Okay. So this-
All right, review and approve the minutes of September 21st.
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on those? Is there any changes? No, there's not. No discussion, all those in favor? That's everybody. Members reports, I'll start with you, Bill.
I keep having people complaining about the light. Everyone's cutting through. I don't know why.
I saw someone cutting through today on my trip home.
I cut through, but like, I had like 3 people mention like, is that ever gonna get fixed? And it does seem like it's even longer now. You sit there and just wait and wait and wait, and it doesn't happen. And I know that we've put this stuff in, but like, or what are we, 2 years out, 3 years out? They can fix it, like.
It's super irritating.
Is that like something you can, like, when
If
they're,
someone hit the pole that the light's on with a piece of equipment and it had to get fixed, would it then be addressed?
Because right
Something
now,
like
I
that.
believe they are done off
time,
time. Because
Yeah,
the cable's in the
all the
ground.
sensors in the ground are full.
Because we've just like
right?
gone over it so many times, so many
There are a
layers.
couple of sensors that still work,
Mhm.
but by and large,
Pressure
it's-
sensors,
Yeah,
by and large, it's all on a timer. And it's not forecasted to be done until 2024. We've asked for it to be pushed into 2023. We think it's gonna get on the end of 2023. And the extension on that light has to do with, by and large trucks running through that intersection and almost running people over.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so now that there's, one of the biggest delays that you have is when everybody's red,
yeah,
because they're holding them there, I think, for an extra 2 seconds in each direction.
Mhm.
So, and then you get the added delay by the turn of traffic on Bridge Street. That's a longer delay.
Yeah.
For that too. So it's far from ideal, but as long as the state's not willing to address it, we're kind of in a
Yeah.
situation.
okay.
Good. Is that it?
Hmm?
Oh, and anything I had, I forgot. So we'll kick it right to you.
All right, the town office will be closed tomorrow. MMA's annual conference is up in Bangor, so staff will be attending that. Absentee ballots, we're gonna start processing those to mail out on Friday. We'll have those available on Monday to go in the mail, and then also people can start voting here early at the town office. Crack seal and strike project, it was expected to start next week. That was yesterday. Now this afternoon, I had an update. They're gonna start the week after. That has to do largely with the state police using the runway. The efficiency main application for the airport to consider purchasing and installing 2 heat pumps, that has been submitted. The total project cost on that from Central Main Heat Pump, which is a vendor we use for everything else, is $98.75. Once we factor in the efficiency main municipal rebate, the net cost for those 2 units purchased and installed is $42.75. That's pending before the efficiency main trust right now. I talked to them today at the conference. And they're fairly sure that it's going to move through, so we'll be able to take care of that and improve the existing building that we've got there.
I have a quick question on that. Do we have any idea what type of cost savings, like what's the return on the investment of that? Like, obviously, it's gonna cut down on the oil bill and like the cooling bill. Do we have any idea about how long before that $4,200 is kind of recouped in savings?
I don't, I can get that information from efficiency main. One of the big things that we've got is the upstairs just has so much heat.
Yeah.
And we have employees bringing in air conditioners from home in order to supplement that, and it's comfortable.
Yeah, no, it is hot in there. All those windows, it's just like a sauna in there for sure.
Excuse me, so I can look into that and see what we can get on an ROI for that.
Mhm.
Down into code enforcement next week, the planning board is set to meet. I'm expecting that they're gonna put their final stamp onto the proposed solar regulations to be integrated into the site plan review ordinance. That will come back to you. I also expect that they're going to have a discussion about setting solar related fees to roll up into a memorandum to you to consider setting those. They wanted to set them in the ordinance, the attorney advised against that. And they ultimately sided with the attorney to say, okay, the select board will be the fee setting authority for solar, but they want to weigh in on what they think that should be, whether it's based on square footage per panel or what.
Now, with that too, I mean, there's obviously the fee with that, but most of the land that this is being put on has been deemed and is being taxed as like farmland, right? So when this is no longer being used agriculturally and this is now basically a business enterprise, are we going to change the taxation of that land if it's being used for that?
Yeah, so it's not farm, it might have been farmland, they're paying penalties to get it out. The penalty, I want to say on the short-term property was $5,000. So one-time penalty to get it out into regular use.
Yeah.
The tax structure with solar is that they don't pay the taxes. The state pays 50% of their taxes, and then that's all that we get.
Jeez,
That's the discussion that
it's not a great
the
deal.
planning board's having internally about how does this come and where is the responsibility to the town, to
Yeah,
the state in terms of
yeah.
tax pay. So that's why they're passionate about developing a memo. I'm going to send over to you. So it's a responsible development that takes care of the town and the state.
And
So
we haven't seen any of that so far, but are there things as far as the, what you can see from the road, things like that? Are we having any sort of camouflage and stuff like that? So you don't have to look at them?
so all of that's going to be in their ordinance, and they have talked about screening and things like that, the setbacks and
Yeah.
whatnot. So it's pretty comprehensive. And that should be in your next packet
Okay,
if everything goes well. Ideally, we will have a candidate to present to you for confirmation on October 19th to serve as fire chief. That's where we are in the selection process. I'll ask you to consider something else under other business tonight, but that's where we are there. On October 22nd from 2 to 5, we're going to host an open house at the fire station for Chief Jones's retirement. We're going to have light refreshments. It's going to be catered for us, and business partners at Scouting Savings, Height Family of Dealerships, and Waste Management will be sponsoring that event. They're going to be the host sponsors, zero cost to us. It was, let's say, not a small bill to get what we wanted done and have it done safely and clean and in a way that was, I think, appropriate for the occasion. And so it was great last week when I was talking with them, they'll reach a step up. And so good news there. Should be a nice event. 2 to 5, come and go as you would like. The DOT speed trailer, that's on loan from DOT. It was on Waterville Road up near the childcare coming into the 25. It's on Madison Road now, just the other side of the store. With people coming down, we're going to leave that there through the long weekend with Sugarloaf homecoming. We'll have a lot of traffic coming down through. Next week, we're going to move it over to River Road, which it says 25. It's actually a 30 over there coming into the cemetery. We'll move it over there, and then we're supposed to give it back. I talked to somebody today at the conference, and we can keep that speed trailer until snow flies.
wow,
So we'll have that at our disposal.
great.
So today's conference was pretty productive in terms of getting things that we need on special favor.
Is it just because once it snows, it can't work or something like that? It's too cold for it?
They don't want their equipment out on the roadside.
Okay,
And
yep.
plows.
Yeah, no, that makes
sand,
sense. Okay.
yeah. The new generator for Public Works, that was installed last week, and I'm now, there's a request for payment tonight on the balance owed. And then we'll be submitting a FEMA for the 50% reimbursement. Good news out of the soccer program. It's been very, very successful. Bobby, Joe, and our coaches have been keeping things going. 2 weekends ago, there was a round robin. Don't know if you drove by, don't know if you went, literally hundreds of people. It's good for our businesses. It's good for the shack. They're making extra money to support the program. If there weren't 400 or 500 people, I'd be surprised.
That's
It was
awesome.
on a parking spot on Route 2. So that was all positive. Sewer Commission, they met last week to review their financials and consider rate changes. They did not make a decision on rate changes. They know that there need to be adjustments. They're going to meet again on October 17th to discuss that. The possibility of restructuring how we're setting rates is a major consideration. The discussion of fixed versus variable costs and how that's being assigned. Your fixed cost may be integrated into your stub fee, so it's going to increase your stub fee. It's pretty complex. So we're going to have 6, 8, 10 scenarios for them to look at, and then we'll be able to work through a spreadsheet to see how it would look hypothetically, but inevitably the rates probably will be going up, and it's just a matter of how that rate structure is going to settle up. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Waste Management had a public meeting yesterday, which was hosted via Zoom. People could come here if they wanted to. Very similar to the presentation that we had at the last meeting for that gate development. Saturday, there's a library event, which is going to be held at Millstream School. We're closed next Monday on the holiday. Next Thursday, you've been assessors and the planning board in one day. And that is about it. The only other thing that I had as an add-on was your road advisory committee member, Gary Viola. Who's been
Yes.
active in the last year, very, very active, passed away over the weekend. So there is a vacancy on that committee. He was able to weigh in on tonight's business,
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
but yeah, that's it.
Thank you. All right, moving forward here, discussion action on October 5th, general warrant number 19.
I move that we approve general warrant number 19 in the amount of $64,828.11.
Second. Motion is second. Any further discussion? Case leads, what's the,
That's catering.
okay,
That's a down payment at the top, a deposit at the top, and then the balance at the bottom. It's two places. Yeah,
And then I'm guessing that the 28,000 for the generators, we're going to be reimbursed that.
50%.
Okay.
that's it. All those in favor? Everyone? Right, public comment. Okay. Right, discussion action on TIF committee recommendations. First order on that is the facade improvement program application.
The TIF committee met last week and they had one facade improvement program application pending before them. That is from Main Laboratories LLC. In the proposed location, 25 Main Street, which is formerly Dr. Baker's office. These folks are here with local ties, looking to start up primarily a PFAS testing facility. And so we have Katie here tonight, who is majority owner of Main Laboratories. And if you could just take us through your kind of application, what you're looking to do with the building and
Sure.
other business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the business context if that's okay. So my husband and I are founding Maine Laboratories, which is going to be a PFAS testing facility. We both grew up in Maine. I grew up in Belfast. He grew up in like Dexter. He went to Skowhegan High actually, so it's been really interesting we did a little drive around the parking lot this week while I've been working on the project. And he is an analytical chemist. And I'm a program or project manager by trade. So we've been watching what's been happening within the state of Maine, and the legislation's been really forward thinking here, which has been fantastic. And so we thought it'd be a good place and time to be able to invest some of our own personal interest into doing something within the state of Maine. We fell in love with Dr. Baker's property. It's gorgeous. When we were looking for commercial property and that popped up, we had to come take a look. And so we got under contract this summer, and then we were able to close on the property last Monday. So I don't know if you've driven by, but that parking lot's been full every day. Contractors, and we've been doing a lot of work, and this is where the facade grant comes in. So Dr. Baker is a lovely man, but there is quite a bit of deferred maintenance on the property. So there's wood rot that needs to be replaced. There's significant painting that needs to be done. There's windows that have been cracked and left, so much so that I think there was probably 2 years worth of pigeon roosts up in the second floor of the barn. And my poor husband had the job of putting on a hazmat suit and getting that taken care of. So I have not been up there on the second floor yet. But yeah, our hope is to take care of a lot of the deferred maintenance, certainly bring the building up to, its glory. So we've got windows, we've got painting, we've got repair the wood rot, remove a lot of the brush that's been building up and very close to the building, which is contributing to the wood rot. And then there's been like piles of wood that's been up against. So we're really just trying to clean it up and put it in a position where it can last another good 100 years.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent. Excited to have you, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Board have any questions?
The only one I have is, there is a lot of deferred maintenance there, but that property has always had really beautiful perennial gardens there. Are you guys keeping and maintaining that, or is that going to be coming out to, assist in more parking? I'm just curious, like if it's going to keep that same.
We don't have a plan to expand parking at this point. Honestly, I don't think that we'll get a lot of customers coming to the property directly. So with the one employee, which I'm happy to say, we hired and signed an employee contract this week, actually. So that was a major milestone for us. And so she'll be using the property. And then most of our testing, I believe, is going to be through mailing. So we will mail out a test kit to the property and then they will mail it back. We're also, if things go well and we have the funds to do it, we're considering hiring somebody who'd be a field tech, and so they'd be able to go out and help actually take the samples for us. And we like that idea because it guarantees that these samples won't be contaminated on site. So PFAS is everywhere. I'm sure you guys have heard and know about that. And so contamination sampling is actually an issue, and it would be great for us to be able to kind of take that off the table, not even to worry about it. And that's part of why we love Norridgewock, because if you open up Google Maps and you do a circle around like what's within 90-mile radius or about an hour and a half, it covers like 80% of the state. It's pretty fascinating, actually. Norridgewock is a perfect location for this type of business. So we're not expanding parking.
Okay.
Now, with that being said, I am not a gardener by trade. And so yes, we'd love to maintain it, but I'm not sure, like on the list of priorities, that is
Yeah,
not
sure.
number one, but we will absolutely, it will be neat and it will be cleaned and it will be trimmed
Okay.
up, but I'm not sure what the gardening will look like. And I'm just gonna try to get it through the winter and then figure it out next year.
Okay. Just great. I mean, it is beautiful. Like, we were talking about the facade and what it looks like, and the big thing that makes.
I mean, I
even
want
the
it
building
to look nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, the building, you kind of, sometimes you're like, oh, nice old building, but
Maybe she's volunteering.
I know, well.
no, you don't want me
okay.
anywhere near it. Like,
All right.
No, no.
Perfect. Anything further? With nothing, I would entertain a motion.
That we approve the TIF committee's recommendation for awarding a full match in the amount up to $12,068.50.
Second. Motion is second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's everybody. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yay, thanks.
Should I go or you want?
You can say
I wouldn't hire you.
I'm so sorry.
I will get a letter to you that just
Okay.
says you've been approved, here it is, and then you'll send me proof of payment and
Absolutely.
invoices, and
Yeah.
we'll reimburse you. We cut checks twice a month.
Okay,
It's
fantastic.
easy, you can do it all at once, or you can do it progressively, however you like.
Okay.
All
All
right,
right. I
thank you.
Thank you.
Nice
Good luck.
Welcome to town.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
All right. Next one there is the improvements to Emery Town Square.
So the Emery Town Square on Main Street, next to the old driving school, next to Little Stream Nutrition, where the tree is, the Christmas tree, it abuts the rail. And the rail will eventually bring motorized vehicles to town. One of the concerns that we have is the use of that space for parking or whatnot. So the TIF committee has discussed the possibility of installing fencing on the backside of that lot to create some sense of delineation between rail access and the lot. That would kind of force those motorized vehicles coming off the rail to park down there as opposed to drive through that area or park in that area. I think it's a good decision, whether you go with a fence or with the retaining wall. The benefit of the retaining wall is that you're able to bring the grade up on that lot and add a little bit more utility. I think it'll be a more attractive space for you. And so there are two options that they had considered. One was the fencing. You have those prices in there in your packet.
Where's,
Should be a price of 12 for ADA fence.
Right on the backside.
Yeah. And that ranges from a red cedar, which obviously isn't, I mean, a red cedar fence, which obviously isn't gonna get you probably the one last that you want. And then if you're gonna go with a fence, the coated chain link fence is about where it's at, so.
and that's only 3,500?
Under $4,000, right?
Yeah.
So, but is that really with the long-term solution for that space, and gonna create the delineation that they want? The TIF committee said no. They asked for a price to put boulders, if you will, on that lower side and taper that up. I reached out to Nickerson Yard Maintenance and they offered the proposal that's in your package, which is stacking blocks and then doing the grade, the reseed and whatnot. And that price came in at $20,500, so substantially different in terms of the pricing, but the TIF committee fully endorsed that proposal.
What about the boulders though? I mean, like, why don't we have anything, that's what they originally specced, that'll probably be significantly less expensive than a retaining wall.
Because of the space that it's gonna take up in order to get the boulders. There's value to the space that's in that small lot down there. And there's also the look and long-term integrity of it. And having to get the boulders to fit together and all of that.
Boulders are
So,
a pain in the ass.
Just seems like a ton of money just to try to keep something out. Like, I mean, if a fence is $3,000 and this is 20,
so the fence accomplishes the goal, the reason that they went with this, and then also the rest of the perimeter that doesn't have that would have large rocks that would be set. It creates a more defined space down there. It's kind of just an empty lost space, arguably a trashy space. And the goal with your store next door, the restaurant across the street was that this might be a more attractive place where people would actually go in and use. The plus up on that, the option that was proposed by the contractor was an additional $1,500 to remove that retaining wall, the concrete wall up near the sidewalk, the old foundation, and then grade that out as well. So the total price on that was $22,000. And the TIF committee's recommendation was to accept the larger of the two proposals.
What about on the top of the bricks there? Is there gonna be like a fence for, something to pull in there and end up driving right off the end of it type deal?
You're not gonna be able to get a vehicle into that space.
Okay,
They're gonna lay it out in such a way that they're gonna be able to get a lawnmower in there. and
okay,
that's it.
that's,
but a person could fall off a 3-foot wall because there's not gonna be any fencing there, right?
Theoretically.
There.
Yeah. So I don't know, they might set boulders up on the side, or that's gonna be something that we'll have to look
Geez,
at.
that just seems, I feel like it'd be great if we, as a town, start using it, but as of right now, it's not like a heavily used area. I just don't understand why we wouldn't try to look at the fencing because it's a much less expensive option and maybe put plantings in front of it. Do, arborvitae's or something in front of it to, give it a more natural look, and we're gonna be,
my personal opinion is that concrete needs to go and you gotta do something with it because it looks like crap.
Yeah, it does, it does, and it has for a long time. Really, both points are valid. I truly do struggle with the 22,000 for that. I love the 1,500 to tear out the concrete because that has needed to go for
Yeah.
a long time. It's a safety hazard, for many reasons. But our events are getting bigger, and I think it's a good, particularly our Christmas portion has really gotten bigger, and that square is the focal point of, not the focal point, that's where it all comes together. Between the curbing and the grade, I certainly see the definite plus to doing the stones, leveling it out, and actually beautifying, giving it some curb appeal, or whatever you want to call it. I think it's a better investment than the chain link fence.
Yeah.
We are so chain link fence that I don't want to do
is
chain.
that
link.
really the only,
talking about
I feel like with fencing, there's a lot of options that aren't cedar and aren't chain link. I feel like there's a ton of, I have horses, I know what my dream fences look like, and those are actually like plastic ones that look like wood. They're more expensive. That's why they're not all over my house, but I just feel like we're just, let's put in the expensive. Did we even explore that other type of, nice white vinyl fencing could look really nice, and if it's half as much money,
So
and how
nice
much
white-
square footage is gained by doing that different way?
Yeah, so the nice white vinyl fencing, I'll tell you, we did it right out here in the store yard, and it's the worst mistake that we've ever made. It looks nice, but it's a maintenance nightmare.
You bumped it and it's messed up.
Right, and the plus is trying to play with the grades. Bringing the grade up actually is pretty significant. If we're able to, if you're able to bring that up 30 inches or 3 feet in the back, that puts that lot at, almost flat or so close that, it's.
How much square feet do we pick up though? How much usable space is picked up by that? Like, if it's flat, great, but is it?
The whole backside of that lot's not used because it's, it's kind of good, and then it dips down, and then so the picnic table's way back. I think the bigger picture, and that's, it's not that we're improving the park, it's that we're enhancing the trail and access to the trail. So it's gonna be a rest area, if you will, where people can stop off, access your downtown, and theoretically have a place to grab a snack kind of thing, and we don't have that. We've explored the possibility of working with Yorks to figure out something else in that lot next door to it. Nothing comes together. We've talked with reputable landscapers in the area, and this is no good option.
Yeah.
So it's kind of to enhance that green space, but also control the flow of the rail trail. And that's why we settled on that.
And I'm actually excited that the committee looked at it and did decide that the more expensive one was worth it for the longevity, the leveling, the curb piece. So I'm pleased that they did arrive at this and didn't cheap out, if you will, and just say, hey, let's put up the western red cedar and call it good.
One of their big things that they kept saying, that it was 2 meetings that they discussed this, is that a fence is only temporary. If they put a fence there, they would want to go back and remove it to make changes to that law.
I'll give you that.
Is there graffiti on the side of the building still?
So that's another project that they're working on. They're looking on trying to secure a grant to go with TIF money so that they could set posts, because there's no setbacks, set posts up against that next building and have a mural brought in and actually install it there. They're working with the Restaurants Arts Council right now. So
Seems like we are dumping a lot of money into a super duper tiny spot. But
it's
let's-
also a big eyesore and really be downtown.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
yes,
yeah.
nice.
And it's rail trail access to the downtown.
Okay.
So how are they gonna, how is that gonna work? Is that trail where that car's parked is?
No, so the rail trail is the railroad track right up front. Yeah, so pretty much right where your pen is right now, you'll be pulling off from the rail trail right down into that and stopping right there. Because that retaining wall stops you.
Gotcha.
Other than that, you end up pulling all the way up to the sidewalk,
Yeah.
right through our park. No, you,
Oh, yeah.
right now, everybody's driving right up through the park, parking on the grass. There's no stopping them.
And that driveway is only a right of way. There shouldn't be parked cars there because it's right of ways, multiple right of ways. So if you needed to get your vehicle, your ATV, it's not the best, obviously you go up to the rail crossing access, I would think. But that is gonna be open.
Because we can't block that, right?
No, nobody can.
Right. If we could, I would. But we don't have that.
So I mean, it looks like that's like heavier vegetation that like this is the rail trail. They just drive right across like.
So, yeah.
That vegetation is actually invasive.
Okay.
And we're in the process of setting that back and controlling that. The state's working with us on that. It's all in the state right of way, and we're gonna do that whole swath of it. And the state's gonna help us grade it out so that we have easier access.
And then we're gonna set this up as like a parking type area here. So what's that gonna cost? Because that sounds like another,
Nothing.
No, I mean, it essentially is right now.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
that's where, because they keep, Yorks keeps their dumpster down and back there, so the trash truck comes down in. And so the trash truck has made that whole back piece where we would be parked, yeah, that's where he turns around, I mean, it's essentially a parking lot right now, it's just nobody parks back there. So it's pretty much ideal, it's basically set and ready.
One of the things on our horizon is how we're gonna handle trash into the downtown, because that dumpster placement is not conducive. They can't get that dumpster without coming onto the town property. That's not gonna work.
And the restaurants got
We're
those.
gonna have to be cooperative with them, whether it's a municipal assistance or it's a
Yeah.
public-private partnership. We're gonna have to look at something like that before long, because we don't want dumpsters in the downtown. If that means we have to involve ourselves or partner with Waste Management, want to get it done, we may be looking at that.
And then with the car, the right of way here, continuing on to York's, that's all owned by York's though.
That driveway is owned by the town.
Right, and then, but that next foundation
It's owned by county.
Yeah.
So what about that concrete? All of that?
So the concrete one there, we've had a couple different people look at it, and we are basically have explored a few different. We're trying to find a way to make that work on yours, because she has offered a deal where if we can do something with it that benefits hers, we can have it.
Yeah.
So it's really just finding something that's not an astronaut, we don't spend $180,000 on, retaining walls down in there. A couple people have looked at it, and
That's
it's,
what we're looking at. And she wants parking lot.
right, that was the part. We couldn't provide her the parking that she wanted. She's willing to work with us, it's a bit more than we're ready to bite off right now. This is, I know it sounds like a lot, but this 22 is really a small step in the right direction to getting that piece to where we want it to be. So it is something that actually looks nice, and it's not just this little green spot with a giant wall.
And just a little bit more on the space itself. We're having people go in to remove the knotweed. That's gonna all be cut down and ideally eliminated. It'll be cut, sprayed again, I think is the plan. And then we're gonna clean up along the shore. And my long-term plan is, it's not beautiful, but to take a stick that we used to have down to the park and throw a stick of dock down there, just to create a little bit more character to the space where you get off, you can go out, look at that. It's a simple addition. It's nice, it kind of gives you that attraction.
Well, ideally, with all that clean, it's a fairly nice spot back in there. You're able to remove the dumpster.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, really, we get an inspiration right there. So I'll take the motion.
Yeah.
You can go any way you like with it.
yeah. I move that we approve the improvements to Emery Town Square in the amount up to $22,000 as set forth by the TID.
Second. Motion is second. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's everybody. All right. Discussion action on release of text acquired property. Ooh, man,
Yeah, so we had two parcels that we put out for bid. Obviously, one generated a lot more interest than another. 180 Bigelow Hill. This has been cleared by our attorney to have moved on, so that's how we did it. That's why we're delayed in this process. We received a number of bids. Your top bid was from Warren Brothers Construction in the amount of $66,000.
He's gonna be,
Pleasure is yours.
we just awarded to him? Is that?
well, yes, in tradition, I mean, we go with the highest bidder. There is no family ties here. I think we've gone away from that anyway. But certainly in this case, Warren Brothers Construction is the high bidder. And certainly no reason that we wouldn't award it to them.
So I move that we accept the highest bid that came from Warren Brothers Construction, the amount of $66,000 to release 180 Bigelow Hill from the town of Norridgewock.
Second. Motion is second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's everybody.
The second item under that is your property number 248 Benjamin Drive, which in my ideal world would have been a bid of $650 for somebody to haul off, just like a storage building. It didn't happen. And it is in a mobile home park, is an on-lot. So we really need to address that.
So we have to pay to remove it and throw it away because it's on someone's property?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best way out in terms of being, we can't find the original owner and being on somebody else's property.
Yep.
So my recommendation would be that we explore getting a price from a contractor to put that into a canister.
Yeah.
And haul it down. Unless you guys have any other ideas as to how you'd like to proceed with that.
I looked at it, it's not, I mean, I could see why.
It's kind of.
I don't think so. It's really rough.
Right?
Yeah, it's an old trailer and it
That's
is,
something you can you give it away?
Right.
You
I mean, you
have a lot
basically
of-
just try to give it away for $615.
Yeah. it's rough.
I have mixed feelings on that, though. It's in a trailer park and they've been collecting rent on it, and it's only ours if we take it.
I was already.
It's ours already, so no matter what, it's ours.
Yeah. So does that mean we owe rent to the stop?
If we don't get it off there. Right. Oh, dude, we're always getting shafted.
The problem was we couldn't, well, you can't find the original owner of this property. We've got a service on all of them, but they don't ever respond.
Is there anything where maybe we can find an interested party that you take it away, you can have it for free?
That's what I mean. Yeah.
But I don't know if it's gonna tow off, to be honest with you, like looking at it and the underneath, it is. I don't know if it would survive a haul a couple miles up the
I
road.
mean, there's things that it won't fit my.
I'm comfortable with whatever you need to do. If you can give it away, give it away. If you
I mean,
can, if you had a, what was your dollar amount attached to having it hauled off, do you know,
No,
ballpark, thoughts,
probably,
$2,000, something.
probably, I mean, it's gonna be just somebody with a machine to put it into the container and wait.
Oh, you're talking about like, yeah, crunching it up.
That's about it, and put it into a waste management
Well, I
container.
don't know, I bet it's gonna be like a couple $1,000.
For somebody to come in with a excavator and just throw it to a dumpster.
Yeah, but don't you think by weight, well, I guess we're.
No, no.
That's right.
Right. I mean, I'm comfortable with either. I just, it's already ours. If it wasn't ours, I would not take it. But where it's already ours, I don't want to leave it on their lot any longer than it has to be. If it can be given away, great, in a timely fashion without exposing us to liability. Other than that, we pay to have it crushed up or
Yeah.
whatever needs to be done. I mean, whether it's $2,000 or $5,000, it's ours now.
Yeah,
It's
I
our
mean,
responsibility.
waste management, I forget we've got that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So I don't know what you want for a motion. Do you just want the approval to do what you deem?
I guess it's a blanket, but I guess it would be a motion to authorize me on behalf of the town to release the town's interest in 48 Benjamin Drive for free.
So moved.
So the first qualified proposer.
Jim? Yep.
Yep.
So moved in a
Second.
second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Is it the same latest? So we don't end up in that boat where we
Yeah,
trigger that.
so we can waive foreclosure. The problem is we've waived foreclosure on this property, I don't know how many times.
At what point does it behoove the landowner to get rid of it? Because they were the one that made the money on the trailer being there originally.
They can't, they don't own it, taking somebody else's property.
Okay, all right, so, right, until, that's tough, that's.
Yeah.
That kind of sets us
Get
up
to the place
to
where-
put the bill unnecessarily.
And it's in a space that can be rented out to somebody else.
It's a decent lot, it's just not a
So
decent
we've
trailer.
talked with the property owner and they said that they want that gone, and whoever was the successful bidder, if there was one, they wanted it gone. So. That's gonna be the condition of the release, is that it's gonna go.
Right, I guess it's different when it's on their own property, but once in a park like that.
Yeah.
That's tough, though, you know, what I mean, it sets us up to be on the hook for this every
Yeah,
time.
we just need to make sure that whatever it is,
No
we
way to get around it.
legally and
Right.
insulated ourselves, like removing that isn't, I mean, just want to make sure that,
If we,
I mean, if someone tries to do that.
$5,000 into a $300 trailer,
Yeah.
just to have
Yeah.
it run.
if we can't get rid of this, then in the next 2 weeks, then we're gonna be back to talking.
And is this beyond our, I mean, I don't know if it's out of line, is it all beyond our ability as town employees to, I mean, we can't crush that up in-house and put it in dumpsters? We don't have the manpower or the time, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
maybe.
merch or something,
Well, maybe,
yeah.
yeah, we've got to have a thought.
Right, I think that would be a pretty.
So we'll talk about that at the next meeting.
Right, okay. thank
they'd
you.
probably be super, they'd probably be fighting over who gets to do that.
Right.
Wrecking houses is awesome.
You don't like them.
Hmm?
You don't like them.
Therapeutic.
They can bring like the Stephen King donated stuff to the fire department, the Jaws of Life. I mean, I'll volunteer.
Okay, moving forward, discussion action on road committee recommendations regarding amendments to the road and entrance design standards ordinance.
All right, so back in August, you folks had talked about the possibility of amending the road and entrance design standard ordinance in order to make it easier for the town to consider accepting roads that could be in the town's best interest. The motion that ended up coming out of that was to refer to the road advisory committee for their opinion. They did not want to get together for a meeting on it. They were all in general consensus. They are ardently opposed to reviewing the ordinance, largely for budgetary reasons. They say that we can't afford to maintain the roads that we have. Why would we want to take on any more? I talked to them about economic development opportunities, about the greater need, and they still remained against it. So the recommendation of the road advisory committee is to leave it as it is.
I would say of all of our advisory committees, I feel like that is probably the most thoughtful and qualified that we have. If that's their recommendation, I have a hard time not agreeing with them. I feel like we really rely on them for their opinion and their insights into these types of things, and I don't know why we wouldn't, keep trusting their opinion
What
now.
is this, this is the head of Farm Road?
It's any road. It would be any road.
You're right, it started over Hado Farm, but it actually speaks to our ordinance, not necessarily the road specifically. But I mean, it is what they arrived at, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
certainly is. And I worry it may have been a little too focused on the Hado Farm specifically. Myself, I was looking to loosen or set reasonable parameters for this ordinance, because I feel that the parameters that are on it really make it non-realistic. Which, given their response, they don't want roads, so why would you want an ordinance that allows you to take them? I mean, so for the time being, it certainly can stay as it is. I mean, we've got enough stuff on our plate. We don't need to add additional stuff. I mean, right now, it certainly doesn't hold us back from anything by not having that particular road or any other road that falls underneath that. So I kind of am with Lindsay. I know I started this, but they reviewed it and that's what they come back with. So I mean, we traditionally stand behind the boards below us that make these recommendations. So, yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, especially our road committee is like really one of our best informed and, so.
Motion to accept the committee's recommendation and table action.
So moved.
Motion to second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's it. All right, discussion action on new road name, formerly 515 Norridgewock Road.
Your property 515 Ward Hill is almost directly across from Walker Road. They had a house that had burned. Now they're looking to build out 2 structures on the property, which would now require a road name. Their number 1 request was Stewart's Way for the sake of speech and communication with emergency services. I have abbreviated that to Stewart Way, which is their last name. And that would be my recommendation to you to accept. The new road name is Stewart Way.
I move we accept the new road name of Stewart Way.
Motion is second, any discussion? Stewart Way is nowhere close to any existing name we have.
Or in Mercer. But I-
Okay, neither one, okay, that's all I had. So motion is second, no further discussion, all those in favor? That's everybody. And that actually looks nice in there, actually, I was able to look at the other day, that's nice.
Discussion and action on special town meeting.
So a special town meeting, people think usually the wrong way. The board has been working in executive session on discussing the possibility of real estate acquisition related to a 2.5 acre parcel on Gilman Drive. It is about 2.5 acres and a 3-car garage with a finished upstairs that could be used for a food pantry. The board gave authorization to sign a purchase and sales agreement with the current owner, I believe in the amount of $97,000, that is contingent upon an approval by the voters to accept that. So purchase and sales agreement is in place, and the next step would be to put that request to the voters, if that's your pleasure. In the proposal that I drafted for your language, it would be to authorize the purchase of that property and then to utilize funds from your ARPA money, your ARPA funds, your federal COVID money to pay for it. We have, I want to say $7,000 right now in a fund to go towards this, community food access. We have another $5,000 I'm going to ask you to accept later. We've also got $40,000 requested to the New Balance Foundation. So that's going to bring us to about $55,000 in private funds. So that would reduce the amount required here. But ultimately the sell that voters would need to accept is $100,000 for the sake of round numbers to purchase this property.
What additional costs are we going to incur as a town if that property is purchased? I'm guessing it's gonna need to be retrofitted to make this, so that it's handicap accessible, that it's, it's also gonna have to be maintained. I know when we had mentioned the Grange before, which is where I think it is makes most sense, there was refrigeration, and that's how it got kind of poo-pooed before. So this property, I'm assuming, has none of those things that it needs. So what additional investments are gonna be required moving up forward, plowing, mowing, all that kind of stuff?
So plowing and mowing and things like that, that's an ongoing maintenance. I really can't quantify for you. It's the same as any other
Yeah.
property. There are probably a half a dozen trees that need to get taken down. And then we're looking at budgetary estimate of $25,000 for build and retrofit, whether that's electrical upgrades or getting electric where you need it, as well as your ADA modifications. The site currently has a well and no septic. And so then it would need a septic. And so from a budgetary perspective, I would put a number of 25,000, which is very high. But from that budgetary number, that's kind of where we're at. We're also looking at what you would need. You need shelving, you need refrigeration, things like that for the inside. It's a commitment. So the other side of this is that the town really can't be that holding entity. We're going to be the holding entity of the property, but the actual pantry needs to be a 501c3. The nonprofit would have benefit from Good Shepherd Food Bank. So we would in essence be purchasing this property and then probably leasing it out to a 501c3 for $1 a year or something like that, which would then be overseen by a board of directors. It's kind of the structure.
Use the structure that's there as the pantry.
It's a three-car garage.
And it's big enough and it's.
Right, and at first go, yeah, I mean, you figure you start with a relatively small pantry, and I can't imagine that you would expand on these things, or that there would be a great need. You would hope not.
Right.
The amount of money that we're gonna spend after the 100,000 to buy this place is about the same amount that we would need to do the retrofittings and things that we need at the Grange, and the Grange was open to that. I just don't understand why we're not exploring that option, and we're looking at dumping $125,000 into something that's gonna have ongoing costs, whereas if it was at something like the Grange, if they were amenable to that, they're taking on the maintenance of the property, they're taking on the heating and all of that stuff of the property, so we don't have to do that as a town as a liability. We just have to get the refrigeration, the shelving, and also lets us, we've shown as a town that we want to make that building nicer and keep it. Now it gives us the ability to kind of redo some things and maybe need some attention inside. For me, I think, I don't feel like we fully explored the Grange as much as we should have, especially since it would be a significantly lower cost to get up and running there. And as far as location, the big thing was bringing in trucks, being able to turn it around there, and then also for central locality for people who needed to walk there. It's kind of the perfect spot. So I feel like it's a two birds, one stone, and I don't feel like it's been explored enough before we start spending a bunch of money, personally. That's where I'm at with that.
Range all gonna use for now,
Not much.
I mean.
It needs some updates inside, I think, and I think that they've had like some events for like Chewonki there, they've had some other things for that. It's outdated, it definitely, just like the outside needed, maintenance stuff, I think the inside does too, but I think that if we have the ability to not only maintain and, preserve a nice building and do this at the same time at a significantly lower price tag, I don't know why we're not actively like having the Grange like committee come in here and talking about it. I would like to do that before I sign anything on this, because I don't feel like that's been explored for me.
You have met the Grange committee and stuff?
I have, but still, I mean, 125,000 versus 25,000 and maintaining a building that we just gave, what, 50 grand to make it look pretty on the outside?
So if an organization like that takes something like this on, don't think we're not gonna be on the hook for ongoing maintenance and expenses. And
We're gonna be on the hook at the other place too, but we won't have to,
But at least you would
shove out
have
100
control
grand.
over that. The one big thing with the grade, I know we're talking with Jim, he was concerned about the strength of floors for what we would necessarily need. The other thing that you're looking at is a pantry, kind of some sense of discretion. You don't want to be right on the main street.
Well, that was my thing, is how much foot traffic and,
Right.
I used to pick up the old food pantry waste and it was gross.
Right.
Gross for the pigs and stuff, and
But
it's
you,
not something they had just rotten food outside,
well, hopefully. they're not-
someone else may run it differently, but I don't know if you want that rate in downtown.
so I mean, it's gonna be better managed than that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that seems like a
But
controllable.
the other thing is that you need space that's gonna be committed. Like, we're not gonna be moving the refrigerators when I have public supper. And so
That's back to what the Grange, even if you do
That's the
one big
setback
thing
of
a
it.
year, it's no longer usable for that.
that's definitely, unless it's a strictly carry out, which isn't the model that, they're really encouraging. They're really encouraging this bodega style where you actually go in and you kind of shop, and that allows you the use of smaller space. And then your warehousing stuff is out back. It's a more involved thing for the volunteers and the users.
And ideally, this thing is self-sustaining within 5 years. I mean, it's run by itself and.
Well, we say self-sustaining.
Right, it's a marginal
It's gonna-
investment by us.
The town really needs to be honest about what our needs are. And when you start to look at the data that we have access to through other pantries, and the data that would be collected through this, if we're not funding $5,000 to $10,000 a year at a minimum to support a local food pantry, we're probably not doing due diligence on behalf of the residents.
Yeah,
And that's just an unfortunate
no
fact.
issue with that at all.
It's scary, actually.
I just don't want it to be 100,000 every year.
Yeah, I just, I think for me, before I feel good with this, I want to explore that more. And if it's not something that we can work out like with the Grange or something, and looking through the building, fine, but like, I feel like that's not been exhausted and it's significantly less expensive, so.
This is something we can always sell to, right?
It is.
Right, isn't that,
Yeah.
right, so that's the thing is you're spending $100,000, $120,000, but you're also getting an asset too, so.
And
Down the 5 years.
I've spent a fair amount of time inside the Grange, and the Grange doesn't work for a food pantry. All you have to do is go in. You go in that Grange hall one time and you would know why it does not work for a food pantry. From the layout of the downstairs to the upstairs is almost entirely non-usable. Certainly not for foot traffic and volumes or for heavy freezers and food.
Well, with 100 grand, I mean, if we're gonna spend 100 grand this easily, could it be? Like, and that's the thing, and now we've got a building that,
We don't necessarily own that we're investing a lot of money in. I struggle to give the first 50 and I would definitely struggle to give a following 100.
but we did do 50. Like, we've already made that, we've already decided, we've committed to making this, you know, something and keep it here. So why would we say now, like, oh, I don't want to invest in that property, because we just did, we just gave the 50 grand, so.
Right.
I mean, if we've got this money, where this is ARPA funds and it's not tax funded, I mean. I don't know, that's.
I think. I don't know, the Grange Hall to me is a place where you do things with the town once in a while. It's not like a heavy used building. You're talking about like using it, I mean, every day.
I don't think it's gonna be open every day, the food pantry, like, who's gonna man that? Who's getting paid to do it?
I mean,
Like,
you have food.
it usually has like a certain days that you.
There's actually a lot of traction behind people that want to be involved in it, which is surprising, but I have a list of
Yeah.
people that have reached out.
Which is, I think plays to the point of keeping it separate. I didn't want it in the Grange, I didn't want it in a church. It's a food cupboard, it's not affiliated with the Grange per se and their beliefs, and it's not affiliated with the church and the church's belief. I think it's nice to have a food cupboard that's kind of independent and not thrown in with another group. I don't want you to not go because you're not a Christian, or you don't go to the food cupboard because you don't like the Grange or what it stands for, or the people that run it. So if it's a food cupboard, it's a food cupboard, and there are people that are willing to run our food cupboard as a food cupboard. I don't know if those same individuals would be so enticed to do it if it was in a church or inside the Grange.
So this Grange committee, what do they do? As just. Not, and I just like, it's just like, you know, salting and maintaining the building, like. What does the Grange
do a lot. I mean,
do?
they host a few things.
Community driven.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
used to be farming, right? You'd get farmers,
Right,
but now
right,
there aren't
yeah.
any farmers in there.
Right,
So that it's just community. So it used to be that they'd have public suppers on a regular basis, and now they meet maybe once, I think they meet once a month now, they're cold.
so would that be like a landlord type deal to whoever ran the food cupboard, like if they wanted to,
That's kind of what you get into is that scenario, right?
you know, I'd like to change this door, and they say no, who pays for that and all that,
Right.
yeah.
It's a lot.
So really what the question is, are we gonna put this to the vote?
Right, exactly, right.
So that's the.
Yeah, we're deciding whether we want to hold this special town meeting to let the taxpayers decide whether they want to spend 100 grand on this
I
building.
think you should give it, yeah, I think.
Yeah, see if
Which,
the,
there are other options, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you're wrong, I'm just,
yeah. I think we might be surprised to see if people want to spend 100 grand on a. building like
right,
that.
you may have an overwhelming response that says absolutely not.
Right, but this is
And-
this is $100,000 on a 2.5 acre lot, some guy just paid 66,000 on some dilapidated building.
Yes.
But I don't think that's an unfair,
It is.
like,
it is a good
assessment of the
thought.
value.
Yeah,
It is a
that's
good
what I'm
thought.
saying, it's always, you're spending 100 grand, but you could also sell it for 150, 10 years down the road, who knows, you know, like.
I think we need to be more clear in the wording with this though, because it's not 100,000. If we're gonna have to spend another 25,000 for
You're
retrofits.
gonna need approval.
Yeah.
Or they're gonna.
But to do this, then there's gonna have to be another 25. I feel like this is kind of saying, it's only 100,000. It's not, and are we trying to get them to say, okay, to 100,000, but we're really gonna, then we're doing another.
You got $50,000 worth of.
Right, we're hoping that we're on that. My goal is to get this taken care of.
So that we don't
Before
have
we're
to
done.
take anything.
But we need to be able to tell, I'm gonna tell, we're gonna be able to say, this is what we've got, we got 12 grand. If in private funding, that's what we're gonna be able to go to market with 11.8. That's it. I can't say, okay, well, we've got an application to the New Balance Foundation for 40.
Yep.
That's gonna get us to 50 something. Or that we're gonna be going to this nonprofit over here, that nonprofit grant source over here or there to be able to get it. I can't do that because it's not, we need the taxpayers to understand what the cost is. And by and large, it's all taxpayer money anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, not the New Balance money, but that's the cost of it. Do you want it or do you not? And if we don't, then we're gonna have to be appropriating money come spring, probably in the ballpark of 20 grand. That we're gonna send out of town to another pantry,
Which I don't support.
12 or 13 miles away that people are using now in lieu of something in.
Are we mandated to do that, or that's just like the nice?
They will not provide our residents with a full menu of available services if we don't financially support them.
Okay.
Very likely, we're gonna have an ask from them anyway for the interim that we've been using them.
Okay.
And I've been working with them to try to say, look, we're trying, I don't have a pool of money necessarily that I can just allocate to them. But it's gonna be a discussion come spring and March. Are we gonna do the people who get food covered and then we're gonna allocate them some funds for what they provided us?
Okay.
Well, on the note of what Lindsay's saying, I mean, do we put a caveat on here or something that kind of breaks down our proposed other investments on this property?
So I can't do that in this. This is
Right,
where
so this is
I drafted it, the
something-
attorney fixed it. We're gonna have to have it'll be a 4-pager where we actually identify the parcel and the location. We have a picture of the building and we talk about the 501c3, how it's gonna be run, what the proposed costs are.
So prior to our actual town meeting, we should be able to,
It's gonna go by secret ballot on November 8th.
right, we should be able to kind of get our cost estimates in line, that's right.
I've been using 25 on a septic and 25 for improvements, because that's high. Right, for what we
But if you want to dial them in, you could dial them in and then have a 1-pager that breaks down our proposed.
Right.
That way, because I get what you're saying, we do get accused a lot of being kind of shady in the fact that we layer stuff that, you know.
It's just not fully transparent long-term.
Yes.
It's here's the upfront
Yes.
investment, but what's the total long-term investment that's gonna be required of us? Yeah, oh, cool, we got a car for $5,000, but it's gonna cost us $10,000 because we're gonna have to do
And
X,
I
Y, Z.
have that, and that's gonna be a part of it, because you have to hold public hearings on this.
Yeah.
Your next meeting is gonna have a public hearing, your first meeting in November is gonna have a public hearing, it's gonna be about this.
So are we gonna have a public hearing for, like, if this went through and was approved for the 100,000 to purchase that additional money that is needed to retrograde it and do those fixes that it needs, is that approved by the select board? Or does that have to go out to?
You can, depending upon the set of funds that you use, if you decide you're gonna use rescue money,
Mhm.
then you can hold a public hearing and use that, that's been approved.
But it could get denied at that point, and then we have to find another fund for that to come out of? Is that what could happen?
Or, yeah, or you go to town meeting and say, okay, we don't wanna make this decision as to where the funds are gonna come from, we're gonna wait until March to move on any of this,
Mhm.
and send it back to the voters in March.
Would we have to?
Pardon?
Well, we could.
Yeah, it just seems like we could buy it and then
You
give it
can't pull
told
general
you.
fund, you can pull it from,
The
our.
board could pull it from wherever they want it. That's-
No, I mean, from what's approved, so you've got your ARPA funds that are approved, right? You have to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
And you can pull from there, you've got TIF funds, some of that could be pulled from there. And then we've got grant funding, so ideally, we're gonna get grant funding to support some of these things. But I can't tell you that. You know, I can tell you that's a hope of mine, but at the end of the day, you've got it's 100 to purchase the property, and then you have the discussion about what's gonna come after that, and that's a year's worth of operation, so you get a power bill, a couple $100 a month after
Yeah.
May 1st. Things like that.
And there's no chance of sewer going down that, it is.
It's not cost effective, we're looking at about $1 million a month to run sewer line.
We can't do a porta potty?
And it's
So
just.
that's what we're
Compost
gonna
toilet?
be, we're gonna be using a porta potty in the interim if we get open before we have the funds secured for a septic. And I think between environmental and pantry and things like that, I think that'll be something that we're able to get relatively easy support for, or we can get local contractor maybe that could help us out and give us in-kind labor. And then we would just pay for chambers or whatnot. I know, it's
It
still a
definitely
cost.
has to have that. Yeah, just,
It's a cost, but
I mean, it's basically you'd only need for like the volunteers to be able to go to the bathroom while they're volunteering.
porta potty.
Yeah. And we can't just
In the
keep a
interim.
porta potty, like instead of having to put in an entire septic?
So it's an investment in your property. You can have it at your house too. We can have one here. They have one at the post office actually. But it's not the long-term ideal. You're gonna have a building inside where you're gonna have running water because things need to be clean. And I can't really have running water if I don't have a septic in a public building.
Yeah, I mean, you would think there would be some sort of health code inspection and all that.
Right, I
Thing.
would think so.
Right. Well, we know that there isn't in some places because we've
Yeah.
seen that.
Well,
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, yeah.
So pretty much just we can motion to throw this to a special town meeting,
to approve and sign the warrant, yeah.
motion.
Second.
Second.
So motion a second. I think there was some good discussion. I don't know if there's any further discussion on that. Again, I do want to I think Lindsay was right, I mean, we need to show all those upfront columns, so you know, what we're gonna have there and what we're projecting. But yeah, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Okay.
So we have one more section of that, and that is the board needs to vote a recommendation of yes or no.
Oh, well, that's good with a three-person board. Well, Jim's in, all right. I support it, I mean, for obvious reasons, yeah.
I support it too, or the Rachel, I don't think.
But I get everything you're saying.
I'm just concerned about our ongoing costs. I mean, like, I look at how much it costs us to like run the library and everything else, and it's an enormous amount of money that we have to pay. Like, I wish we could find a way to incorporate it into another building or another space that we already have. Or,
Nobody goes to the library anymore, and everybody.
well, we're still paying over 40 grand a year to run it, like.
I don't want to go one program at the expense of another, but you look at the library, it's got its own building, it's got a staff person that's there 24 hours a week. And.
But you take out that staff person, it's like 18,000,
So
it's still like 30 grand that we're having to, you know, you take out that, like, it's still.
I get that,
A
but when
building
you start
cost.
talking about broad-based impact, we're not talking about cultural
Yeah,
or anything like that.
right, there is a definite need, we have been underserved, and no one's fault, for a long time. Their food's, it's real, and we definitely need it, and I do like this location, it is private, it's close, it's walkable for so many of these people in town. But I really do like the location, I think we lucked out and you found it, so I mean, kudos to you. But yeah, that was a good find, and I like the price, and I do feel, like you said, it's an investment, that septic goes in, well, it did just up the resale of that property, opposed to the.
And it's off the main thing, I mean, you get falling hard times, you go fall through the food can, no one wants to see you out there.
Well, the other
I
thing,
mean, I'd like it being.
So- I don't live on that street, but have any of the residents been notified that this is now going to be the
Well,
place where, I mean,
That's what.
that, this was my tiny little road. I don't think I'd be super excited about this being the new place where,
Yeah, so I have talked with the neighbor that owns just about everything down there. Does have some reservations,
I would imagine, yeah.
not really. Has full confidence in the town's ability to oversee something and make sure that we're not, that it's maintained, and we're not having trash sit outside and things like that. We have the ability to push our assistance, even if it's nonprofit running it. There are concerns about road and road maintenance.
Mhm.
I have assured him that we would be willing to work the ownership of the road out. So that can all be fine and fair. We're not gonna be in the business of being bad neighbors.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
It's a small road. I mean, it's
It
a
is.
tiny road. It's
It is.
very, very narrow. Like, I'm curious, like when we initially talked about the Grange, it was, well, it needs to be able to get a tractor. That, I'm very curious how a tractor trailer truck will do that now on that road, because it's a dead end and it's like, I mean,
Right, ideally, you'd be able
and-
to pull right down in and turn around at the, because if you've been down in and looked at the lot where the garage sets and the gravel pad next to it, you're almost able to pull by and back in now. You could almost turn a semi in all the way down in. So it does, I was worried, like, I thought it was gonna take place at the road, and I had a little reserve there because, well, right, exactly. A semi broadside,
Yeah.
a section of road right there. So as long as they're able to pull down in, I don't foresee that being a big problem, that was a concern.
and none of the neighbors are concerned about the foot traffic now, the increased,
I
like,
do know where it is, right?
I drove down the road today. Yeah, just to see, I was like, where is this place? And it was a narrow road. It was,
Right. So I think candidly, we're gonna be good neighbors. We're not up in the middle of the night. By having some of added traffic to the point where it is, we're not really into the heart of the residential area on that road. And I think that it might be a welcome attraction for some, in terms of bringing some light down there, some added traffic. With any town building comes a little extra police presence. And we're in close proximity to the school.
Mhm.
The neighborhood, I think it's gonna be a win-win, as long as we hold true to the.
yeah, as long as the neighbors are aware and they're behind it, because that would be,
They're mostly unrelated. And the seller does not live on that road.
No, exactly, yes, yeah.
Mhm.
He just,
It isn't about it to the property stuff.
do we get any state or like federal funding to run this year after year, or like,
So no, ideally it's gonna be run off from volunteers. Most food pantries do it. You can hire an executive director. I don't think that we would need that. We've got a lot of folks that are interested in this, and if we do it right, which is what I like to do, they'll be excited about it, that people will want to go and
There's
volunteer.
a
to
church
this.
down there going towards your house, well, was it Carrie? It used to do a lot of that stuff down there.
Yeah, Charlotte too, I think it was quite.
You'll find people that say, okay, I'm gonna give you that 2 hours a week, and they're gonna do this, if somebody's gonna be willing to do the books, and it's not a lot. You get a lot of free food from Good Shepherd,
Mhm.
and then you can get plus up. And that's where the costs come into
I was just
it.
gonna say, like, I'm just curious, where does this money come from year after year? Like, what
The
pockets
town
do
will
we have?
remain a funding entity of any nonprofit food pantry in Norridgewock. If we're not, we're gonna end up being a funding entity of somebody else's.
Mhm.
It's just where we're at right now.
So what is your ballpark of what we're gonna be annually contributing to this food pantry?
Well, that's, I think it's probably a personal question, but I'll give you my personal opinion, and that's if we're not putting out 20 grand a year to support food access in our community, we're probably not doing it good justice.
And where does that come from? Is that like based on, population or like,
When you look at the number of users
Right.
of the facility, it's striking. It's
Okay.
sad. You look at the demographics that I've been able to access from people who care. You're looking at 1 in 3 seniors in our community using the food pantry today.
all right,
The poverty rate of the school horrifying.
Mhm.
On the flip side of that, we have the opportunity potentially for revenue from neighboring communities. The Smithfield has a small pantry, but we could theoretically provide access for them. Mercer, same thing. They're all coming in, and that's the school, and so that could be a revenue for us if we were to open it up to their residents. Smaller populations, but
and would they contribute to that or would we be?
yeah, no, they would need to. In the same way that other pantries want Norridgewock to contribute now, because we're not providing that service.
How is it, I don't think that anybody wants to be in the business of like, can I see proof of your residence here? Like, if we all of a sudden have like,
That's exactly what it is. It's
Yeah.
one uncomfortable meeting for qualification, right out of the
Okay.
gate, and then it's a periodic qualification in terms of income.
okay.
I think if you're serious and you need help, that's not a big deal. It's
Yeah.
done privately and.
I just want to make sure, I've personally never been to one, so I didn't know if it's just like, oh, I think they're like, Amy brought some cheese over, she donated, like, do people just show up and be like, I'd like some cheese?
That's the
Like,
real thing, so.
Yeah, no, I know it is, like-
People that go around.
yes, and
cream
just
cake
grab a
get the
freebie,
best
and
of
like,
it.
people who need it, 1000%, but if it's like just open to anybody, and you've got people from Mercer or Farmington, because they heard that we've got,
You can have somebody from Augusta come in to the Norridgewock pantry, if it exists, and say, I would like this. And by the way, I live in Augusta, and the answer is yes. And anything that we get for free from the federal government or from Good Shepherd, we have to provide that as under the terms of what an agreement would look like with either of those entities. But what we would pay for, if there were groceries that were being bought above and beyond what those free items were, they don't have access to that.
so we could potentially be in a spot as a town where if this became like, it sounds like it's gonna be nicer than most places, and we want to set up something nice, but if we all of a sudden have an influx of people from other towns coming and we need to keep food in there, that we could then be on the hook to keep, we want to make sure everyone who's coming to get stuff gets food, but are we,
It's a very
How do we-
limited amount of stuff that's free.
Right, everything you have
People aren't gonna
2 or
travel.
3 organizations that will donate to you for free. And by the standards of those agreements, those parcels of food are eligible to everybody. But stuff that we got locally or that was purchased locally or local donation don't fall under those same guidelines. And we would have the discretion to say, you're not a Norfolk resident or, this is your 3rd trip here this week. I can't imagine they would turn away anyone regardless
Yeah.
of circumstance unless you were a frequent
Right.
flyer.
yeah,
Which I've got to imagine it doesn't take long to identify those.
yeah, and this volunteer staff is gonna, have the ability to understand, like, this is a free thing, this isn't a free thing, because it seems like that's a lot of training or a lot of knowledge to put on a volunteer to have.
By and large, it's pretty simple.
Is it?
Your produce is free. Fruits and vegetables from Good Shepherd is free. And then you get your federal food boxes, which
Mhm.
the government cheese, it's
Yeah.
real. You get cheese, you get milk and things.
It's gotta be easier than coaching youth sports.
Has to be.
Anything is easier than cooking. Okay, all right. I just want to have a full idea, full picture of what like full long-term cost commitment to the town, since this isn't funded by the initial thing is by grant, but it looks like this is gonna be an ongoing expense for the taxpayers. And I feel like I want a very clear understanding as to what this is gonna cost taxpayers long-term, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
So we're right, once we get this moving, I'm in the business of then setting up a 501c3, which we're really gonna oversee in the short term until we can get that group of volunteers set up. That can then take it themselves, and then it rolls out relatively independent from the town. And then they'll submit some requests with their financials, and it's gonna operate just like any other social services.
And does Skowhegan have one? Do we have, a rough idea about what their estimated like cost is each year?
No, it's all taxpayer funded.
There's this, and do we have any records of the previous?
No, the surviving family is attempting to get that together for us. They're attempting to settle out the books. It's a 501c3 that's not in good standing. They didn't take care of the paperwork, so the families have to get all of that taken care of. And then settle out everything, call on any debts. And then their intention is to turn over anything that we would like to the town, including the balance of funds. We don't know how much that is.
Okay. All right. Well, then I move that we put it out to vote for November 8th.
Second, motion and a second.
That was already done.
Okay.
We're talking about
it.
support.
All right,
Do support, yes, or no.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I support it as well.
We put things. Okay, look at it, this is something that's just gonna cost you money, but it's something that everybody needs, not everybody, but lots of people need. It's not the airport where.
But we just work, actually, like everything we're talking about, whether it's Usula days or anything, it's like, we can't make this bigger because we don't have enough volunteers to do it. And yes, there might be some of this, but like, it's not this, it's the long term, who's running it? And if we don't have any volunteers, then what happens? Because now we've got stuff there, like, now do we have to hire somebody because we don't have the consistency of volunteerism that it's great that there seems to be interest now, but long term, what happens if they're not? Or like,
You're 100% right.
Yeah.
And at that
that's-
point in time, we close down just like others, and we put a for sale sign.
You would just hope that's not the case.
Right.
You know what I mean? How can you be a quality?
I've
You
had
don't.
several, not several, probably 3 or 4 people ask me about what's gonna go on with the pantry.
yeah, I'm not saying that there isn't need and like want with it. I'm just saying the running of it and the town and taxpayer responsibility. That's I 1000% think we need it. I completely back having it. I'm there. I just want to have a full understanding of budgetary like expectations for the taxpayer. And I feel like it's a little murky right now. And I just don't like signing off on something that's a blank check in perpetuity. And I feel like that's what we're kind of doing
The
here.
town won't be able to won't sustain wages. at a food
Yeah.
pantry.
No.
Not gonna happen. So it's gonna be volunteer labor, and if the town has to, then the town could theoretically absorb your heat and your utility costs.
Mhm.
That's what's there, right?
Yeah.
And so that we can try to fix an estimate too, but
I just want to be as transparent with the taxpayers as we can with something like this, like.
We are constantly accused of.
Well, and we should be, and we should be held
Think about
accountable.
this too, right? You're talking about retrofitting the Grange and then not have, to be a food pantry, and then you don't have, then the Grange is a small little.
It's still a
grocery
community
store
meeting place
that
still that you have, like, I feel like neither one of them are a bad investment, if I'm being completely honest, like, like if we put the money in the Grange, like, yeah, we don't own it, but still, was that a bad investment for the town? No, because it's a building that we want to preserve, it's right in the heart of downtown, if we made that last another 100 years, like, I don't feel bad about that if it didn't work out to the landlords. Like boards change all the time, I don't want to ever base my decision on a specific person or persons that are somewhere that maybe aren't the ideal situation. And in the future, there could be a whole different, it's not a bad investment either way. Neither one is. I just want to understand what the long-term cost is. And that's why I'm asking these questions. Like it's,
if you have somebody else in having to.
well,
For sure.
I support.
and hopefully when it comes to the vote work, people have watched the Zoom meeting and they understand all these other things. So they're not just like, no.
We're gonna, there'll be paperwork, we'll put stacks at the bank at the post office, to take it.
Yeah.
Well, right.
All right.
You hope it becomes the scuttlebutt, right? Everybody talks about it, and there's some information.
I don't want to be the one that's like, Lindsay hates big food pantries. That's not it. That's not it. Like, bring the cheese. I swear, like, it's okay.
Okay, you're good on this,
All right.
Okay, discussion action on downtown parking ordinance.
All right, so this is kind of in its infant stages, but it's something that we really need to address, and that is our downtown parking situation. Got about 50 parking spots between our 3 municipal lots, 2 on Main Street, 1 on Main and Welch, and then we've got our curbside spots. We have convenience store and attorney's office, substantial amount of residential. We've got the tire warehouse, which doesn't take up any public parking, arguably. And then we have a new restaurant. And how are we going to control, for lack of a better word, access to parking in our downtown? And so our downtown parking ordinance is old. I don't even know if it's got the date on here as to when it was approved in 1994. And so it also only governs from Welch Street and Depot Street down to Mechanic Street. The developer of the new restaurant had inquired with me about putting time restrictions on parking spaces down there. And I personally didn't think that it was unreasonable, given that those are oftentimes used for parking rides in a central location. So yeah, they come and they go and they might grab a snack on either side, but is that the best use of municipal parking lot downtown to have a truck or car sit in there for 12 or 14 hours to a time? Not good for our downtown economy.
Is it more maybe not necessarily in those municipal parking lots? Because I feel like if you are gonna do a park and ride, and we should want to encourage people to like not drive as many cars, like, do we maybe make it that's on the actual roadside that there's like a limited time parking? I don't know.
Right. So I have drafted this to say 2 hours, 2 hours of municipal lot, 2 hours on the curbside.
Oh, good, okay, this.
That's how this is drafted. It also extends it, the downtown area, to this intersection here, Route 2 and 201A.
Mhm.
That's how I've drafted this.
That being said, though, we always have our stuff with, we can put an ordinance in, but who's gonna enforce it? Who's chalking these tires? We can do this, but there's literally no enforcement, so it's just a neato to say.
We don't broadcast it necessarily.
Like, that's, but, I mean.
But
It is.
we can hire somebody to do that.
No, that's more money.
Downtown, or we could not broadcast the fact that we don't know why they're enforcing it, and just advertise. And just advertise that there are rules in place and hold
Yes.
people to respect and observe them
Yeah.
instead of laughing at them.
Yeah.
And that is what the business owners asked, is that
Yeah.
you put rules in place. Now, I can tell you, if I go get an iced coffee on my way to work and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the car is still there. By the way, we have cameras.
Yeah,
201 service, I've got one for you.
so the town then becomes the chalker.
If you will.
If you want to, if you see somebody that's regularly.
Hey, you
Actually,
wear a lot of hats, Richard. If you
I know.
want one more hat, you.
Well,
It's not just
Like,
my
it's-
job, it's
Yeah.
about respecting the people that are in. our
And I
town.
think that we need to support that
If you
business. I
think
just,
about
as,
you-
It's not just that, it's
The
Yeah, you get the nutrition.
offenders of this right now, if you think about the vehicles that sit there,
yeah,
the signs make it so those people can't, because they're there every day,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
If some are
you're
gonna
parking
enforce
there every
it,
day,
like,
you're going to get your $50 fine eventually.
Yeah. I just wanna make sure we enforce it. We're gonna change this and do that, like, if we're gonna spend any time doing this, like, we need to follow through. And do we have the ability to do that? And if the answer is yes, to an extent, then sure. But if we don't, then that's,
Ideally, the guys with the park and ride, BIW and the 2 other companies, they're not by fault, I'm not saying it's these. They won't park in our downtown parking, they'll move up to Asula where we want to encourage them to park. And for the employees of the businesses that currently park roadside, that take up valuable spaces, won't be able to park there. They'll need to utilize other parking, so it should free up space. Especially in those peak hours. I mean, we know that downtown is really only clustered right now for about 3 hours of the day, in the morning and then again in the
Yeah.
afternoon. Who knows what the restaurant's gonna do?
Yeah.
I mean, right, if the restaurant does well, I
Yeah.
mean, this,
we wanna make sure that there's
Yeah,
access to
closer.
parking there. And last thing we want is, that business opening up here, investing in the community, and then all of a sudden, oh, patrons aren't paying because they have to park all the way.
right, and 2 hours should. do
Yeah,
it,
over.
right?
Yeah.
Besides a long dinner, right?
What, I don't know if we've ever talked, the old Christmas wreath thing, what are we doing with that? 'Cause-
Privately.
Privately owned, it was purchased Yeah.
Because that thing looks like, A, it's gonna fall.
It was a discussion,
I
yeah.
guess
And
let's,
two, that'd be a great.
let's hold on that discussion. It's the ownership of that building and where it is located is in debate right now. We probably should insert ourselves into that.
Okay,
But yeah,
duly noted. All right. So you want to accept these
No,
additional
so this
provisions
is,
or?
you have the ability to pass an ordinance related to parking. So I'm looking for your feedback, what you think is reasonable. I've gone at a 2-hour, gone to a 3-hour, back to a 2-hour. Poke holes in it. I'm gonna order signs that say it's a 2-hour parking limit, probably, and mount them on those.
yeah,
Oh, but.
Parking lots.
right.
But we need to really do due diligence and put this document into place so that it is enforceable if we see abuses.
Yep.
A lot of our downtown parking space is soaked up by people that live there with multiple vehicles.
It's everyday people.
And a lot of vehicles, some of them are not in good repair
Yeah. let's-
and shouldn't be there, and they really. You don't want to be insensitive to it, but when you live in a place like that, you have to expect that you're gonna walk unless you want a parking spot. Now, I know it's not downtown Boston where you pay $150,000 for parking spots, but there are considerations that need to be made.
Sure,
And we want to encourage staff, and one of the things we need to think about before we move on this is. You've got somebody like an attorney that's operating downtown that's in for 6 or 8 hours a day. But they're in during the day, and they're up by 5 o'clock.
yeah,
So do we have an exception or permitting process where they can apply to get a permit? To. Get that waiver, and that waiver is good between these hours and that hours. You have an immunity card, somebody's disabled, obviously you're gonna give them
yeah,
preference for parking. So those are things I think that we really need to flesh out before we
Yeah.
move on this.
I think that
And we go public hearings.
a lot of the businesses downtown do have their own off-street parking capabilities. The law office does have, I don't know how many spots there is there, but there is,
That's town owned.
that's town owned.
Well, actually, he has a
Oh, okay.
lower driveway that he doesn't.
Could,
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was.
Single them all.
Huh.
It is, right. There,
But that's it, in my singling it out, that's somebody that we need to have a discussion
Yes.
about.
Yeah,
There's 2 employees that work there, 2 employees that are downtown, we love
Yeah.
that. How can we keep them, how can we encourage other business, but keep them happy at the same time?
that is trickier.
Mhm.
The
That's
other
why
thing
it's
is-
here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Try to get some
also-
of that feedback.
and also too, in section 9, how are we, I mean, it's, a fine of not more than 500, but not less than 50. I mean, is it within this that we say your first one is 50, your second one is 250? I mean, like, what is the progression of fees?
So this is if we end up in court, so we would go file civilly. In small claims and go after it.
and do we set the fine, or is that?
Yeah.
It would go to the court. The court would
They
decide.
operate
Okay.
what it is.
All right.
Ideally, we're not gonna end up in court, because you're gonna have the ability to tow a car and the cost of having to have that car towed.
It's gonna be more than-
Enough to.
Yeah. Okay,
It's really a respect thing.
yeah, okay. Any idea what that signage is gonna cost?
No, I'll pull it from Public Works
Okay,
and just have something modest that matches in with the public parking. Probably have the reverse colors, white on. Blue on white instead of the white on blue kind of a thing,
all right,
and just have it underneath and put it all. Where we have public parking signs now.
Okay.
And just go with that.
Alright.
So then we can work on the kinks of this.
sure,
Think about it, I'm sure people are really passionate about it. One of the other things that we really need to do is encourage people to park the right way down there. Delivery trucks going the wrong way.
Mhm.
Now, it'd be nice if we had business owners that when they had delivery, told them, no, you're not delivering my product, you're gonna turn around. It's a safety issue.
I'm awful.
Yeah, well,
Depends which way I'm going.
so it's bad enough now, you're gonna open up a restaurant and then we're gonna put ATVs and snowmobiles down
Yeah.
there too.
Yeah. it is something that we'd have to have a forethought with, yeah.
So we've got to be honest about it, and we've got to think safety and access.
Yeah.
And we have neither of those if we keep operating with it. It's easy when you
Yeah.
come from Everett.
It's almost
say,
like we need to-
"Well, we're gonna yours."
Would
Yeah,
it make sense
It is.
for like the working business hours to dedicate one of the municipal parking lots, maybe the one that is at the attorney op? Like, that is where if you work at any of the surrounding businesses, you can, if you prove that you're employed there, you have a sticker, and that's the 8 to 5
I think
parking or
that's all
something like
Wall
that.
Street.
I think it's Wall Street too. I think you kick them up
Yeah.
to there.
And,
along with
I think that
anybody
would kind
lives.
of
Yeah,
help the businesses that are here and their employees, like, give them their own designated spot from like 8 to 5. That is, it seems like that's a I mean, they're not gonna wanna do it when it's a blizzard out or it's raining, and nor would I, but, do we make a spot for them during business hours and then have those, rules in place for weekends that are different and like, the before and the after? I mean, seems like that's kind of a fair trade-off for putting this in, but then also making sure that the businesses understand, we understand you need this too, like, we don't want to put you or your staff into a pickle. Here's our solution for that.
Exactly right. Do you just turn that into parking for them specifically?
Downtown employees only or something like that.
Yes,
Okay,
where it's permitted through the town or whatnot, where
Right.
an employer is assigned X number of
Yeah.
tags
Yeah,
because they have this many employees.
yeah, but between the businesses, I mean, that really should help
yeah,
fill
I think
that
so,
law.
yeah.
So, yeah, that is good. I do like that.
So there's no action required on that. I just needed to get it in front of you because we are gonna need to work on it.
All right, moving forward, review of ongoing projects.
So I started calling it drop balls, and then I nailed it in our favor for ongoing projects, because I started adding in things that weren't necessarily drop, but things that we've talked about that we haven't moved on. So we're gonna go through this. And if you have things that you want to change, tweak, add, delete, let me know. We'll start with the Parks and Rec, where we've got the dock and swim area at Lucilla Park. That funding has been approved. We've sought potential dock systems that we think would work. We've got to work on that layout. And ideally, I talked with Matt about this, actually, we need to get an on-site consult for really what we want for that ideal dock system. The dock systems that we've looked at, they're like from 0 to 1,000 in terms of their style and the layout, and what's gonna be best for the river. And so we need to get a couple of those vendors to meet with us on site so we can get that ball rolling. So hopefully maybe we can be ready for spring to move on that. One of the things that we had talked about was the initial design was probably too big, so we want to move that back a little bit. So that's where we're at.
So when when I see consult on there, I just like all of our engineering stuff. So this is basically vendors coming in and doing it.
I
It's
need
not
a
gonna be additional
salesperson
cost.
from the,
Okay,
it's difficult and I don't want to sound shady, but we know that there's going to be 1 or 2 docks
Mhm.
that are going to be better options for that location on the river. We need to get them in and we need to ask them for their recommendations for layout and
Yeah.
price proposals.
okay. I just want to make sure that we're not adding a consult fee in there. So what do we have, like
No.
70,000, 75,000 for that? I just want to make sure we weren't like,
We're not engineering this.
Okay.
We're gonna get the dock guys,
All right.
not the dock guys, that's business, but
yeah,
people are
okay,
here to help us take a look at it and the terrain going down to it.
Sure.
what the
Yep.
recommendations are.
Okay.
Your rec field bleachers, this one came and went, and now it's back again, probably because of the round robin at soccer, but the rec field bleachers were approved, and then we delayed, we didn't move on it because people don't use the bleachers. And then I kind of had to come back to me, so that's why it's here. It's almost all the way green, so all we have to do is order the bleachers. But is that something you want to leave on that list, or do you want to pull it off?
it was already approved. So I mean, like it went through
We
us.
shot it down because of, right, I think it was mostly me,
I didn't do it down.
Using the bleachers.
right, I just.
I didn't do
Unanimous
that.
going it down.
Was it? Okay, maybe I led that charge, but after the soccer thing and seeing how many people just really didn't bring chairs and.
I feel like I told people this, but nobody listened to me.
Everything
Ah, wow,
was
weird.
utilized, you know what I mean? It's just like the monster bleachers wouldn't work, actually, with the way that
Yeah.
the field, the soccer.
They need to be
field, there's
movable.
not room
Right.
in between the fields for a massive set of bleachers. So I mean, yes, bleachers, I don't
We
know.
need ones that can be moved around because
Well, 3 rows.
whether it's,
Yeah,
the
those
small
big
fields or if it's like the softball fields, we need to be able to wheel them to different places.
Yeah, it was me and Matthew had everything we could do to stand that big set up,
Mhm.
to get the hornet's nest underneath it, so we can't open it with 2 people.
So we want to.
Sturdy enough where you can't just jump on and break it too.
Well, that's what's been happening.
Yeah.
Well, I think the ones we decided on, we're gonna have sides.
Yeah,
Because then
they are.
we
They're
met
long.
like all of the requirements legally from like a
Yeah.
liability standpoint, but also we would eliminate why our other ones got ruined because the kids were jumping on the side and then they could bend it over. If we've got the sides, people are safer.
So they wanted the 5 originally, so it was the 5 row originally.
Yeah.
That's what they had, and we can scale back to a 3. And
I don't know if we'll be able to get this around, but I don't think we need this around.
On the 3, but you don't go high.
Right.
Which should drive down the cost and make them a whole lot lighter.
Right.
but they still now can be jumped on, so.
They can, so I don't know if you want to kick that back to rec and see if they have a, you know what I mean, a recommendation on what they would like to see, if they're against our 3 bleachers, and if they want 3, if they want the side pieces on them.
So I think you can get.
About 3 of this way, because it doesn't go over the 30 inches. Right. I'm game either way, with the 5 or the 3. I certainly see the 3 as really a bit more versatile for moving
Yeah.
around for soccer and everything.
Yeah, it
else.
accommodates more activities, I think.
Right.
And allows you to switch from season to season is significantly easier than,
Dolly for those things.
they have wheels on them, like there's like a, you can kind of drag them.
You just want to move in and purchase into a.
I mean,
I don't see a reason.
I'm not on the rec committee anymore, but if I still was running it, I would say yes, we just need something so
Yes.
people have additional.
Well, did your brother put cameras up in the shack there?
That's right, yeah, so everything is on camera now, so
Yeah.
the vandalism, not that it's, couldn't happen, we just should have some footage of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And knock on wood, I mean, since the installation, we haven't had any. So.
Yeah.
that's
Makes you
been-
feel better about spending money anyway, at least you might be able to catch the person.
Structure surveillance cameras at Usula Park. The building options, we've talked about these concrete prefab things, which are 60 or 70 grand, or like a little lounge building. We really need to get that site prepped out.
Yes,
I think we need to see samples of these buildings too, because I think it was
Yeah.
important for everybody to see what they
I
look.
did actually like that salt box style with the door, with the double doors in the front.
Yeah.
So, right,
When you
probably.
say
everyone
concrete
should-
building, like, I mean, Usul is just one of our prettiest.
We're not
Spots.
putting a concrete building.
Okay,
Too much.
I was gonna-
It was very expensive.
Could have been nice.
I just think
but
aesthetically, we want to
70
make
grand
sure that, it adds to
Yes.
what the park looks like. It has to be utilitarian, but it doesn't mean that it can't also be pretty and like,
You want to bring the samples for our next meeting?
I'll print the ones off and send to you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. And, okay, park swings and playground chips, we got the playground chips, I just need to order new saddles. And
Get 'em.
then do you want just the regular saddles, or do you want, we kicked around the idea of like an ADA?
I think that we should probably have something. I mean, not just for like, wheelchair and ADA, but think about any sort of special needs children that need more securely fitting stuff. I want to make sure that
Yeah.
anybody in the town, regardless of their abilities to, hop on a swing themselves or not, like, I think that we should have that.
So all new saddles and
Yeah.
one different one. whether
Yes.
it's a wheel, it won't be a wheelchair, those are, I mean, unless you want,
Yeah.
those are expensive.
No,
We can get one where a parent and the child can go.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that people would love that. Like, if we see what the cost of that is, I mean, if it's one like that, like maybe we get a couple of those, because I think that even not special needs looking at it, I think that that's something for,
Yeah.
if you have a small child, you can make it, more fun to use for other people. And that's kind of what we want people doing, is enjoying it. So.
All right, your Ashland Park preservation, that has been sent over to Colby. I gave him a list of really our project objectives for the site. And they're bouncing that back between departments to see if they get a level of cooperation there. I'm hoping to hear back from them in the next week or so. If I don't, I'll reach back out to another contact that I have there and see if I can move something. Ideally, we have an intern that can work with us through the winter, so we can roll things out come spring, but we'll keep an eye on that. I did get a good reception when I reached out initially to the department I reached out to, and not environmental studies. So you're actually in parking access. That's gonna round up this department. The clearing and stump is, I was out today. It's probably done in terms of clearing and stumping. Groundwork needs to be done, and then we've got to find a contractor that can take care of that portable toilet shelter. It's coming along nicely. We've only received a couple bits of negative feedback on the project itself, and most of it comes from chainsaws at 7:30 in the morning. I'm sorry, but that's usually the hours that those kind of folks work, so.
It's past that.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's moving along nicely. Moving on to public safety, I've widened the department umbrellas up quite a bit. Your fire hose washer, that's been approved at all levels. At last contact, Todd was just waiting for supply chain to clear out a little bit before we place the order, and possible developments in technology. Your fire department trim and facade repair. We're only looking to fix that upper section of the side facing Upper Main Street. The officers have been reaching out to a couple local builders to have them come in and give them prices, so that's moving as well.
Well, not to interrupt, sorry about that. why just the upper?
I was
Because
just,
they want to see how that's going to the weather. And then decide if we need to then go around the entire perimeter of the building, or if that's gonna take care of it. Do we need to go and replace all of that material, or is it just on that gable end there over the door?
okay,
Before we go and spend a ton of money,
sure.
let's fix and see if that
I
takes
like the
care of it.
conservative approach, so yeah,
So, because it might not do what we need it to
Yep.
do either.
that makes sense.
They're working on that and they have made good progress. Your new fire chief, that selection process is underway. Offer negotiations are in progress. Your fire hydrant painting, we talked about that at the last meeting. I generated the letter on your behalf to the water district. We need to work with them in order to review what hydrants need what for paint removal. Does it need to be brushed? Wire brush? Does it need to be sandblasted? This discussion there as to how that's gonna go about. And when that would all happen, we need to make that plan so we can adequately go after them. Fire hydrant's gonna look like trash in the interim, but we're moving in the right direction there. So had a good conversation with Todd over there too, so. And then the SCBA purchase, that's the grant that they submitted to FEMA. We still haven't been awarded it. They've awarded 6 or 7 rounds of that. You're almost all the way done. The fact of the matter is that this is a funding issue. If we don't get that grant, it's
It's not happening.
could be a couple $100,000. It's
Yeah.
something that's gonna need to be addressed. The airport terminal building, we've had the idea, design layout, reviewed by pilots. It's hit obstacles here and there, but what the actual needs are, what the demand is. We put in the bipartisan infrastructure grant application that was unsuccessful. I've been asking for scoring information, criteria, why we were unsuccessful, I've been able to get that. But that remains on the horizon. I didn't think that there's much traction for local funding for that. To complete that process, if I'm off basis, then let me know. The other opportunity that's still on the table is to work cooperatively with DOT. The aviation division has been looking at airports that are similar to ours, where they could theoretically bulk together 8, 10 airports. They're in a similar position, and then apply under the bipartisan infrastructure funding package for that as a co-op, if you will. So that's kind of the next thing that I'm waiting for out there. We did doing things like the heat pumps, which is further down the list. And if that happens, you know, those are things that are improving the building that we've got. In an ideal situation for the pilots have said that they need, we would just put an addition on the back. So I think that's money that's gonna be well spent, and you can always pull out anyway. But I guess we need to put a little bit more thought into where we want to see that terminal building go. If we really do want to see the expansion on the back, or what. If we leave it the way that it is, we're fine. But if we start to get into it, then you look at the ADA compliance issues and whatnot.
Right, and I think it's really just some type of comprehensive idea of where our planes are at the airport, whether it's terminal building and parking, if it's terminal bill and additional fencing, if it's, just like everywhere else, where we're, the projections for what we're doing there and the list of stuff that we shall repair in the next 10 years or, redo. Because I don't know where their needs are. We're certainly like with the school days getting more, exposure at the airport. We want to do fireworks and all this other stuff. Really need to know what their needs out there are going to be for our plans.
Okay. Crack seal and line strike, that was a project date of 10/10, that's now 10/17. Your new maintenance supervisor, that is now all done. The selection process is complete and onboard documents are in place. Roland Ray gave his resignation about 2 or 3 months ago. He's been out there
Oh,
for a
really?
while.
That's too bad, because he was fantastic.
Yeah, I decided he was looking for a change. No reason really internally, just looking for something different to do. And so we've hired on Bruce Hurley, who was a pilot that's out there. He's retired from state police, motor vehicles, not a detective, investigator. And he's off to a great start. He started regularly on Monday. And things seem to be going well. So he's got all on call for transition, but very pleased with how that's going there.
Yeah, my question with that is Roland was fantastic and that he wore a lot of hats and he did a lot of jobs around the airport that we'd have to pay a mechanic for, a contractor for and stuff like that. So that changing of the guard, how much more is that gonna cost us the airport now?
Yeah, so Roland is very confident in his abilities. They overlapped quite a bit in the last 3 weeks or so. we move sideways on compensation because of the faith that we have and confidence that we have in the employee. Not to get into personnel, but
Okay,
the compensation is there, we're always confident that we're able to take care of our needs.
okay.
We're not seeing any incremental outside costs.
All right, yeah, I just always felt like we got like a real bargain, like it was kind of like getting like 2 or 3 different roles filled with one person, so I just want to make sure that,
We did, and this compensation largely reflected that over
Okay.
the course of time.
all right,
Your runway lights LED conversion, this was something that Roland had brought up to me about researching options and pricing. Started with efficiency main today, I figured that would be a business we could get into. It's actually gonna come off your list. One of the big things that they spoke to me today about was the incandescent light bulbs melt around the lights themselves. And so that actually keeps those lights visible. So unless we want to get in the business of having to clean out around all of these lights, you need to keep the old school lighting fixtures. For a small.
Right.
They did it up in Prescott, and they had to go back, I guess is what they had told me, so we're not gonna be looking to
Okay.
upgrade, the light bulbs are super expensive for that, but. We don't wanna get in the business of having to clean out every runway light, and they say that
Yeah.
the heat generator.
No, thanks.
Takes care of itself.
Yeah, no kidding, I didn't think of that. That's
I
good.
didn't either.
Yeah.
So your public works, your sidewalk rehabilitation, we're getting a lot of resident discussion about this because they did send notices out about right of way and work and whatnot. Your plan construction is 23 and 24 for that, that's staying on target. The generator purchase and install. Public works, since I've done this, that's done. The Usula Park doesn't belong there. Neither does the rest of that, so I apologize.
Just on sidewalk,
Yep.
I mean, do we have, it's been so long since I've seen anything, and I have my memory shit anyway. All our light layout, I mean, do we have all that of where all our new lights are going and that we're adequately lit and that we don't have a light in front of a business and that's, you know what I mean, or.
I'll say yes and I'll say no. The TIF committee has, through committee, agreed on a light. The pole, the fixture, everything. So that's great. I've sent that design to DOT about 2 weeks ago. So that they can engineer the layout. Going from,
So what, would they determine our spacing and,
yes,
but we still, we both sides of the road?
where it's feasible,
Okay, and they're gonna determine where it's feasible.
yes. Because they'll alternate.
We keep our lighting and the upper lighting on the poles. So that all stays, our new lighting will go in and there'll still be the upper lights that are on the poles.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm just, wanna make sure that somebody is on top of all that, so that when it does come time to actually happen, we don't have a. You know, a big mess of, hey, we wanted lights here, or that shouldn't be there, or that looks dumb.
Right, so it's all of this, it's the Safe Pathways to Schools.
Right.
Is really the large funder of this project.
sure.
And so it's about that periodic lighting. And I have initial charts of just where our lights exist now. And we were gonna put more in the states as a part of their contract with us. They're laying out where it's gonna be, especially during crossings and whatnot. So, and they've been in town and they've looked at our existing lights. I still don't look at our existing lights, they're not gonna exist. We want them gone out of this project. So I've sent the light fixture that the TIF committee approved to them.
Yeah, I just, yeah, thank you.
So what's it look the same? So we're getting all the ones now are
Yeah.
going, we're putting lights back where they were and then more.
Yeah, and we're hoping that poles will be able to
We
be
should
pulled
say
back.
that. I have 2 different lights.
Yeah, we're hoping well, we have 3 different lights downtown maybe.
Yeah.
So those will all be gone and replaced with the one light, and the lights will then extend all the way up to the bank.
That look good.
Ideally, in an ideal world, most of the poles are gonna get moved back behind the sidewalk instead of in the middle of the sidewalk or on the street.
Can we make that happen?
No,
We can't, they have to deem that on their own.
yes, it's largely based on ADA access, so you have to have that width. In order to accomplish that width, we're hoping that that's gonna be the leverage to move most of those poles back.
Oh, great.
Could only hope.
And then we're able to get our flags off from
Yeah,
and onto our decorative fixtures.
which would be
That
awesome.
would be real nice, yeah.
So that's where we're at with that. Moving on to the library, there's only one project that's at top of mind here. Which is the outdoor classroom, which didn't really have a lot of traction even with the library folks, and it was kind of something that's gonna be shared with the rec. So that's just sitting there. We had deferred it because of the drainage project and because of waiver and support from the library itself. So do we want to see that there, or do we want to just pull
All right, my vote is to pull it, only because it seems like there's I don't know if that's a forever building, like I don't know how much value add that's gonna have, and it's gonna be fairly significant cost to put in like the concrete pad and the overhead structure.
Yeah.
And then is that gonna interfere with some of the stuff that rec then is able to do on the fields if there's a big structure? I think that we pull it now and until we have something a little bit better about
I
that.
agree.
Thank you. So the other thing that I do need to add to that list is the back room at Sophie May Library. It's very back. It's not finished. It was excluded, I think, because of cost. When they remodeled, it's also exposed to the basement. And so we've had price estimates in the past of about 20,000. There's funding there to do all. It would be a beautiful space if it actually happened.
Is it ever open?
But
Is the library even open to the public now? Like I feel like it's been
No.
closed forever.
No, but it needs to go on our list.
Yeah,
It needs to be on our list.
Well, then it also
of
needs to have a
projects.
plan to like be open, because I feel like,
So we're working with the Historical Society to get that library reopened. It's a zero traffic library,
yeah,
zero. So the best that we can do is partner with the Historical Society, which we have, to say, here are your keys, which I have,
it's now a genealogical research place.
and focus on that.
yeah.
And they're going through the books and they're sending some over to the new library and they're disposing of some books and then they're protecting some books. And it's volunteer driven. The town's not paying these folks, they're doing it volunteer hours, and it's going pretty well. And I think once it gets done, COVID's been an obstacle to that, largely because of the population that would help support that kind of program. And so they've been in there working, and they've also been willing to field the calls to the historical from Sophie May. It's a work in product and a work in process, but the back room needs to get done. And then as a part of that, there were also outside improvements where there were rotten spots here and there. It also took care of the moisture in the basement because that was never done properly when they did that. And really that back room needs to get closed off downstairs. And that's all included in that. That's a 3-year-old price, at least.
Yeah, so it's probably
I mean, certainly
They have money, the money is available in their reserve funds to knock that project out. It's just a matter of pulling. the trigger.
What projects aren't gonna get done if those funds go there? I mean, is that?
Nothing. Well, right, because yeah, I mean, that's really all they have
What?
for work that needs to be done.
Right,
That covers our operating cost. I mean, I just,
They're able to pay for theirs and not drain their account there.
no, the library is very fortunate that they have things like the Eastman
Mhm.
grant that comes every year, that's
sure,
very often been allocated to Sophie May. There was residual money from Sophie May when they did the renovation. There's like flood insurance money that we received a long time ago. And candidly, we've just kind of lumped that into the Sophie May account, knowing that that's all where it came from. Yeah,
Then I see no issue.
and I don't see it to be tax dollars either.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
that's,
as long as it's not an
So it's not
additional
getting something
expense
separate.
incurred.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
I just,
definitely
you know,
would with
we're gonna
that.
allocate money to that. I really like to see it open, like, to see it, you know, to see it, you know, be used by actual people in the community. And I mean, even when it was open, it was only like, what, like 2 or 3 or 4 hours on Wednesdays?
Which
Last time I was in there, I took in a group of Boy Scouts, and my son was one, so it's been a minute.
I've never even been in there, because every time I'm like, oh, I wanna go, I'm like, oh, they're not open.
The historical volunteers have been willing to do that stuff by appointment.
Yeah.
And that's the best access that you're gonna get. And when they're trying to staff their museum, that's gonna be the prime time to be a Sophie May too.
Yeah.
So it's either more money that we're gonna pay for somebody to be there, or we're gonna be thankful for the volunteers that we have and cooperate with the Historical Society.
And this is necessary, like, upgrades or fixes to this property to make sure that there are any
It's not essential.
further
It's
issues.
been ongoing, because, right, was it the foundation that was the 7 years ago? or-
I just say we do the minimum to keep the
Washed out.
building upright, but I don't think we need to invest a bunch if no one from the public can actually use it really.
And we're very invested into this building, this piece of property at this point in time now.
Yeah.
If it's not in use and we don't maintain it, we
We
don't.
lose it.
Oh, really? That's,
Yeah,
okay.
That's how it was gifted to the town.
I didn't know.
All right, so I'm adding that to the library list, taking off the outdoor classroom. Under your other is the food pantry open and acquisition. That's really not gonna move until we get the vote of the town, and then your generator installed here is estimated late this month, early next month, still up in the air. Sure, there's gonna be more stuff that we're gonna add, but this is gonna be something we're gonna keep going back to. When we do goals in the spring, this is gonna be something that we're gonna go back to.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great call.
Okay, other business.
I move we discuss add donations to the agenda.
Yeah, we get all the obligations.
Second,
Motion a second. All those in favor?
I move we accept the donation, the amount of $5,000 from New Balance Athletics to support community food access.
Motion a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I move we add executive session to the agenda.
second.
Yeah, motion a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's everybody.
We don't have to do that now.
You don't have to do that.
Well, we're not going to because you said you had something.
Yeah, mine's, yeah, so we can just hold that for just a second. My other business is not really pressing, and it's not even really, an issue yet. What was the gentleman's name from the Children's Club? Or who was it, Joe or?
Joe Higgins.
Joe Higgins, right, so the ATV club met with Joe Higgins the other day. Their tentative plans right now are for the rail trail to be open as far as Hotel Street. This back bridge behind York's not being done, so there'll be a Jersey barrier. They had mentioned us potentially using, if we're willing, to use some of our grant money or other funds to redo this small bridge behind York's with local funds instead of waiting for the state, which could be next year. So if we wanted to see it done this year, they basically said that we would have to use local funds and local labor, if you will, the ATV club and volunteers. I'm just looking to get a general consensus from the board, whether we have any interest in getting a price on what these bridge materials will actually cost, and whether we would entertain the idea of either using grant money or American Rescue Plan money, right? I mean, those would be our two funding sources for that, either our pre-approved grant funding or
contingency.
If the town puts this bridge in, something happens on this bridge, like, because we put it in, there's no liability.
No, it doesn't really work like that.
So back to the state doing it in 1 to 2 years. Can we get reimbursed on that?
Well, they kind of,
If we do it till however.
I can't speak for them, and Richard could acquire more, but through the conversation, we've essentially been given $100,000 grant, you know what I mean? Which could be used in variable, it's not the way it was put to us originally, but I mean, it's certainly not wrong to think that we've been given 100,000, and if we need $14,000 worth of lumber
Right.
for a bridge, that it's not unreasonable for the state to ask us to pay 14,000 out of our 98,000 that we got, even though we've already got our 98 allocated for up here. It's a big play in numbers, but for us, it comes down to, do we want that bridge open if it's even feasible? I think the club and stuff could make it happen for this winter.
So is that, what becomes unpassable if there isn't a bridge there? Are
There is a
there-
Jersey barrier right there at the edge of Mechanic Street, so that you can't go by the TDS building. So if you came down on your snowmobile, you've got to take a right and go to Cumberland Farms. Okay, you can't actually get into town. You
But
could,
get back on
but
the
it wouldn't be
like-
in a safe way. You could go to Cumbies and then head downtown on your snowmobile. Not a real thing. Unsafe, right?
So when you do cross that, what's?
Once you get across the bridge.
Well, you're not going across the.
No, so right, you only get the little bridge. That, all that does is allow you to get into our downtown area, the restaurant,
Right.
right? And you could
So.
technically go as far as the trestle, which then opens up Ainsley's, because I believe that Ainsley is cutting a trail. They have one essentially down to it. So it opens up the restaurant and Ainsley's to traffic. you know,
Snowmobile traffic?
Versus
Are we gonna have
stopping.
signage, making sure that everyone knows to go this way?
So the state does all the signage on the trail. It sounds like it'll all be uniform and it will be up. If it's open, their signs will be in place. But it comes down to us.
If
on
we
whether
did
that
something
bridge
like that,
needs-
we're using town dollars and we're looking at it as a way to move more traffic
Yeah.
with that population into our downtown, to the restaurants and the stores. Is there a way that we can also, a lot of times when you're on a lot of these trails, it'll say, you know, like this road, that road, can we have something like such and such restaurant here, this way, that park? I mean.
I think that will be
additional
on
advertising.
us. I think those particular signs
Yeah.
will be up to us, whether we put one in ourselves for the restaurant and then another one for the other restaurant. I think that will be it.
Like food, bathroom, gas, and stuff like that, so people keep coming our way.
I don't know.
So let me ask you this.
I've had some, I've had some discussion with members of the Snowmobile, the Sportsman Association, that could potentially be a recurring revenue for them. That the association could get these signs and that in order to maintain the town office sign, the town office would then give $200 a year to have that directional sign point to place of
Sure.
business.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I
Yeah,
think that's,
but
I think it's gonna get money, I think businesses will
signage
be
is
excited to
key.
do it, yeah.
I mean, I snowmobile,
Yeah.
signage is key.
Yeah, you wanna know,
There's so
I'm
much.
hungry, I've gotta go pee, like, I bet, you know, like,
Well,
Yeah.
back to the bridge. So that, you're talking 14 grand, or, I mean, you don't really know, but
Right,
to
straight
go-
numbers.
But realistically, you're paying, say, 14 grand to go a few hundred more feet down.
Yeah, just gets you to the restaurant and gets you to another gas station.
See,
but people then hop on to like, I mean, they're gonna go to the rail trail anyways, eventually here, so they're gonna just, they're gonna find their way to the downtown, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Are they allowed to cross the Eugene Bridge, Cole Bridge?
No.
Not
Well,
technically, but.
Yes, yes,
They are?
it's the bridge itself. There's some debate on how that will be this season.
It's not gonna be.
What do you mean?
They're just gonna leave it status quo. They don't want it changing. So snowmobiles will get across the normal bridge just like they do right now. It's gonna be bare pavement on that left-hand side. It's a little dicey, but it does get you down there, which allows you to connect to the trail of Skowhegan.
Right.
Yeah.
As long, yeah,
I mean,
that's my thing,
yeah.
if you, as long as you can cross the river
But
somehow.
the bridge really only benefits the restaurant and Ainsley's. Everywhere else, you can get some way else. You get off the rail trail prior to getting in. Well, yeah, that's, yeah, York's, I was totally missing York. So there's a few, so there's 3 or 4 businesses that gain from that trestle. That feed's being done.
Not that I care one way or another, but how many businesses do you have downtown that people are gonna patronize when they're on the snowmobile?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So there is value there. Oh, yeah, so there's multiple businesses that benefit. It just really comes down to that cost for me.
And the way the
You know.
snowmobile trails, like if you come off,
And it
I
keeps-
guess 87, like you basically come in behind like the
I don't want to see.
doctors obviously
somebody
open up and go to
come
Osceola,
up
right?
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying is it. They need to be able to move through town, right?
Right.
Without staying on the main roads and having a place to use with other businesses, you know, there. Because that's the big thing, is you don't want to go Cumberland Farms and then sit down the road. That's the big,
But how
that's.
are they gonna get from like the restaurant now down there? They're gonna go down the road, right? Like,
Well, no, I mean, technically. With that trestle piece open, that one, you
Yeah.
would pull into that parking lot, park and go eat your food or go to York's, get your sandwiches, get back on your sled and go do your thing. Right now, I mean, are you gonna park at Cumberland Farms and walk down to the restaurant, or are you gonna scoot down the side of the road on your snowmobile and park in front of the restaurant on your snowmobile?
yeah,
Right,
I know what I would do.
right.
We won't say. So we want to deter that because we can, but by rights. I mean, you can get.
I guess the way I
around.
like to
feel like I just
say
can't picture it.
is we're not spending the money to go to 4 or 5 businesses, which is what we want, but you don't want them on the road.
Yeah, right. So it's just being proactive instead of reactive. If we wait till winter, it's a
People
problem.
we're
We're
gonna
gonna
get a bitch when there's a number.
Right, but honestly,
They have.
even if we approve the funding or the idea of the funding, I don't know if we can get all this together.
Right.
And the
Mhm.
club to make this happen before winter, because I mean,
how deep is it? Like, it's not like a swamp mat type of deal?
oh, God, no,
Yeah.
that trestle is, I don't know, 25 feet off the water. They want about 65 feet of bridge because of the approaches. Yeah, it's pretty steep. It's a little, it's treacherous back there, it really is. But of course, I mean, you want it done nicely too, because it's a key component in the back of our downtown as
They got
well
those
as.
pass and, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot to line up. Just for right now, I need to know if the board had a general interest
Yeah.
in getting the rest of the.
I definitely feel like I need to physically get back there, because
Yeah.
I don't have a ride up in that section. I can't.
I had
picture
to
it.
go down this morning.
Yeah,
After
like,
talking
I've
about
gotta
it.
see it. I mean.
Yeah.
It could be one of those things where you go and you're like, yeah, like we need to, where you're like, that's a big, it's a few more feet this way on the road.
I think it's
And I think we
important
can't make a good
to-
decision without having that, to be honest.
Before the road, they even peeled up the rail, there are people complaining about everybody on the road. I think this was our way of trying to keep them off the road.
Okay, so no, I'll get a price here and we'll have something official at our next meeting for it. Because I'll have time to talk with the club and you and Joe and everybody else so that we can get some type of plan and design that is appealing to both them and us, especially if we're footing the bill.
And something that state later down the road isn't gonna make us tear up.
Yeah, from the sound of it, as long as we go by the designs, they like it, they're on the hook for everything and right.
Mhm.
We expose ourselves to zero liability.
I really like to, since we are aiming this at downtown traffic and
Right.
that those sponsorships of like different businesses, stuff like that, like I think that is
Yeah, and well, and the flip side of that, I mean, you have a landowner on the other side, Mike O'Brien, who has purchased a lot next to him, crushed a house, made this beautiful lawn, and the last thing we want to do is put something horrible on the backside of what he's nicely redone. So.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I needed with that. Right, you want to go into that executive session now?
I don't have anything else.
Okay,
Alright.
neither do I.
then I move that we go into executive session.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, except for. put on the sheet.
Oh, just that last one.
What's the last one? I move to adjourn.
Motion and a second.
No further discussion. All those in favor? Second.
We nailed it with all